Well, hello, everyone. It's your girl Gabrielle from A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. So, if you are not familiar with this web series, where have you been? It's already been 60 episodes already. 60, you guys. So, we are deep in it already. But that's okay. If you're new to the show, let me tell you what we're about. So we don't talk celebrity gossip. So for those of you thinking hot topics, oh, you're going to talk celebrity gossip. No, this is not the show. This is not the show about celebrity gossip. This is the show where we talk that real talk about certain topics. Things in like we talk things in like education, maybe in terms of how we relate to people, mental health, physical health. There's topics here. If you check out our video library, we talk about people with disabilities, we talk about divorce, we talk about what else we talk about? Homeschooling, right? So we have a certain scope of topics that we like to focus on. So if you're looking to hear about Pete Davidson and Kim Kardashian, this ain't the show. But this is an educational programming and we are here to educate you. And we here at A Step Ahead Tutoring Services, we believe that people's life stories, people's experiences, beliefs, what have you, are tools of education themselves. So, with that said, let's get right to it. So, our topic for today is an interesting one. I'm so looking forward to this topic. The topic for today is, what does it mean to be a man? So, I know when it comes to this topic, there's a lot of definitions out there. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, or when people talk about it, people get offended, but this is a chance to have an open discussion about manhood, about manliness, about what does it mean to be a man. Now I know it's kind of weird, me being a woman and talking about, you know, some people might be watching this funny, like, who are you to talk about manliness? You're a woman. Da, 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 da. But listen, this is a chance to have an open discussion about manliness and what does it mean. And it's a chance for even women to understand, what is the other side thinking, So this is a chance to have an open dialogue. And that is what I mean by hot topics. So, with that said, let's get right to it. So, I have a guest with me who is going to sit on the hot seat, who's going to take the fire and take the heat, and who's willing to put it all out there. His name is Harvey Laguerre, and I want to introduce him to you. So, let's get to it. Who is Harvey Laguerre? Let me tell you who he is. So Harvey Laguerre is a 47-year-old stay-at-home dad of four. He's a Mr. Mom, you guys. The emergence of COVID-19 led to the creation of a relationship podcast with his wife called Love is Black. The success of that podcast emboldened him to create his own. Men are the P.R.I.Z.E podcast is the result of years of learning what it means to be a man in the world today. The definition of masculinity has changed drastically and not for the better. Attributes that were once manly are now toxic. What has not changed is the lack of safe spaces for men to express their emotions. Being a vulnerable man is not celebrated like it should be. This podcast is that safe space for men to open up and reveal their inner monologue. This podcast is the what, where, when, why, and how of manhood. So we will provide the link to that podcast at the end of the episode, but that's a mouthful that he said right there. So let's get right to it. And just a quick reminder, if you are watching this in real time, live with us, go to that chat feature. If you have any questions or comments, leave it in the chat and we will address them as much as possible. But if you're watching this on the replay, leave a message in the chat anyway, and we'll get back to you when we can. So, with that said, let me get my guest to the show. Hey, how you
Hey,
doing today?
I'm good. And how are you?
I am fabulous. Thank you so much. So there was a mouthful in that bio there.
Yeah,
Might be a little hot, hot things there. That's kind of the point of the show, right?
yeah.
So let's get right to it. So I want to know what your definition of what does it mean to be a man? That's the question of the episode. So I'm gonna hand over the baton to you, and I'm gonna have you talk about what does it mean to be a man.
It's a great question, and it fits for this episode, of course. Being a man is not something that is definitive. Being a man has many different definitions. What I am as a man doesn't is not the same as what somebody else is definition or actions of being a man. We're all human beings. So what we're kind of talking about is gender and such. So for me, being a man is being an upstanding citizen, being a supporter. I'm a parent also. So as a man, I have a bunch of different titles, a bunch of different, I guess attributes, things that have been thrown upon me that I have to be. So I'm a husband or a boyfriend. I'm a father. I am a chef. I am somebody who's helping with homework. I am a helper as an adult, and as an adult man, I am aiding my children and my family in their progression into this world. But when we get more into what society considers man to be, I don't really fit that. And even if you were just listening to the bio, stay at home dad, that's like the first thing. That's not typical. It is more typical now. But for the longest time, fathers weren't supposed to be the ones taking care of the kids at home. They were supposed to be providing the home for mom to take care of the kids. So having a father be the main, I guess, the one taking care of the kids, that's not a typical thing. And that was kind of frowned upon. I'm Haitian. Obviously, I'm Black, you can see. And that is not a typical thing for us. We're expected to go out there and work, go out there and provide for our kids, for our family, and then come home. And just, we could be dad outside when we come home, then we can be the forceful voice that needs to be heard in case the kids aren't listening. We're supposed to have our women, barefoot and pregnant. We're the head of the household. We're the pastor at the church. We're the CEO at the company that, everybody works at. We do all the important, maybe backbreaking physical things while the women in society take care of things that make the house the home. They're the emotional backbone of a home. So a lot of what being a man to me has a lot to do with my partnership with my wife. So being a man means I am the parent in my home because my wife works. She's out there making the money for us. So being a man means I'm dad. I'm here to take you to school, to pick you up, to help with your homework, to feed you, to be there when you had a bad day, to be there when you had a good day, to answer questions, to be that adult that you need. And I take pride in that because I've made my own definition of what being a man is. And that's something that we should all be allowed to do. We shouldn't be kind of set in our ways and set as one particular definition of anything. Me being a man is my version of being a man. There's other versions. And then the issues we end up having are that people aren't willing to accept other versions of being a man because they have an idea of what being a man is. Just one thing: stoic, non emotional, wake up, handle business, come home, whatever. Whatever issues you have, deal with it, rub some dirt on it, keep all your emotions inside. That's what a man is supposed to do. And that's not what a man, or at least that's not what I think a man should be. A man is as emotional as a woman, has the same struggles, same issues, same concerns as women do. And the only difference is that how we've been raised, we're not raised to express them. I'm not supposed to tell you how I feel. I'm not supposed to tell you I'm scared about something, or I'm concerned about myself at work, or there's somebody else at the place who's going to get the promotion that I think I want, and now I feel inferior. Or When I was in high school, all the girls really didn't talk to me because they didn't like the way I looked. So then, because of that, I have a complex. I'm a man. I'm not supposed to even express that. But to me, being a man is everything, representing everything: my emotions, my strengths, my weaknesses, my happiness, my sadness, my depression, my anything. I can put it out there without fear of reprisal, fear of judgment. And a real man can do all that. And that only works if whoever's around us is willing to accept it. But the man that I am, the man that people around me have to accept, is that I'm an emotional, supportive, loving person who just happens to be a man.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So, let's talk about you a little bit. So, did you always have these beliefs about yourself as a man, or like did you have it growing up, or did it change somewhere? So I'm wondering, I want to know about your mindset. Did you always have that mindset, or did did a traumatic event happen and you flipped it? Like, where does your mindset come from?
So I'm Haitian, and Haitian is a very, obviously, and not even just Haitian, we'll say Caribbean, very patriarchal kind of culture. The man is supposed to do this. The man takes care of business. He's the one that kind of runs the show. He's the head of the household type of thing. And that's what I grew up in. And my father was like that. He wasn't the best father. It's not, he's still alive, and I still see my father. But I grew up in that kind of household, and it didn't really ring true for me because the household I grew up in, my parents got divorced when I was 10. And that first 10 years of life was an incredibly abusive 10 years. So what I saw, what I grew up in, is a household where a man was kind of typical of what a Caribbean man is: working, come home, expect food, expect dinner, expect sex, whatever. And if he doesn't get what he wants, he handles it however he handles it. And because I was the only child at that point, I grew up in it. I heard the arguments, I heard the fights, I heard all kinds of things. And what really started, I think, for me is growing up, I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to get married. The idea of marriage didn't really fly with me because I was in a house with an incredibly unsuccessful marriage. But it turns out it was really because of the man in that marriage. So I'm already not sure what it is to be a man. I just know I don't want to be that guy. I'm not going to be that man. I know that. I grew up, family is pretty religious, a lot of Seventh-day Adventists. So I was taken to church. I'm not spiritual, and that's because I was taken to church. And in that, I saw a lot of men, and it's the same kind of thing. And not a lot of men that I liked their attributes, the way they acted. So that kind of pushed me away to that too. Grew up, went to college. I did my thing, good, bad. And I kind of saw, man, I was surrounded. We're all surrounded by men, but I didn't like how the men that I saw acted. But then as I grew older, I was eventually surrounded by better men, real men. And the majority of the men I know are good ones. And they weren't all the same. And then I became a father. And that's really when it hit me, my idea of what a man is, because I became a father and I didn't think I was going to, but then I became a father. And this is really dumb and it's kind of petty on my part, I think. But as I became a father and I would watch commercials, and it never really hit me that when it comes to even advertising for diapers and baby food and carriages and all that stuff, like we were never in there. All that advertising was always for the mom. And I'm like, I'm a dad, I'm a parent, and they don't even include me in stuff. Or be some, I don't know, some commercial woman having a baby, and it's the woman there, and she's just holding the baby, and the guy's nowhere to be found. And I'm like, where are we? Why are we just the extra? Why are we just like the side piece? And I'm like, I know I'm not that guy. I was there, and I will always be there for every doctor's appointment. I was there to see my baby born for every appointment. I can't have the baby, that's biology, but I can be a part. And so little things like that started to chip away at, to me, the idea of what being a man was. And now we're kind of in this society where we're in this war. It just feels like we're in this constant battle, specifically in our community, black men, black women, just men ain't whatever, women are this, blah, blah, blah. And it just seems like society and I guess our mores are kind of changing. Now, women are on the come up. We're not staying at home, barefooted, pregnant, working, independent, strong women, stuff like that. And it just seems like men were just kind of being blamed for kind of everything that's happened. And that's not to say some of that isn't true, but it's not all true. It feels like there's a stain on men in general. And that's the issue I started to have. It's not all these men that are bad. And then you got the hashtag all men thing where everything that happens is kind of men are bad. And I think I just started getting into this. We're good. We're men. And we're having to deal with what the change in being a man is. And what being a man before wasn't good. And what it means to be a man now is changing. But it only feels like we're changing. And it doesn't feel like we're getting kind of supported with it. Because now, being a man, now I can be open. I can be vulnerable. I can talk to you about my struggles. But a lot of men try that. And a lot of men have said it. And I've felt it myself. That opening up that emotional side of being a man, it gets thrown back at you. And that's a concern for a lot of men. I open up to my girl and I'm like struggling, and it's something, it may seem like the person is nurturing you there, but the minute an argument comes up, it gets thrown back at you. So it gets harder to open up and kind of be the man that women say that they want, because when we try to do it, then no, you're not a real man if you're talking like that. So growing up, just how we are perceived, how men are shown. And as Black men, I've watched enough movies, I'm sure you have, and TV shows. We're the criminal, we're the drug dealer, we're the deadbeat dad, we're all these bad things. That's just how it portrayed. And I'm just like, I'm sick of that, because that's not all of us. We're bad fathers when it's not the case. We're Black fathers or in the kids' lives more than any other races men. We're around, but there's this idea of us men is we not ish. And I'm sick of hearing that. So that's really what it is. It was just with time, how we're perceived, how we're seen, how society sees us, how we're treated. And then on top of that, we're just getting killed left and right when it comes to obviously with police and whatever. So it seems like being a man, and in particular because I am a Black male, just being a Black man is just so many issues, so many things against us. And at times it feels like our women are against us. And a lot of the times it's us against us. Like we're fighting ourselves. So that's kind of where I am, and why the idea for what being a man is came about is through years of experience, my personal experiences, and kind of seeing how the world sees us. So that's where I came from.
Awesome, awesome. So you said a lot in that piece there. So one thing that stuck out to me about what you said was, you had your father as a role model of what not to be, right?
Right.
And um, maybe, and then you grew up. I'm not sure how old you were. You were surrounded by other men, and you didn't like how they acted, so you put yourself around a different set of men, and you liked how they acted. So it sounds like you started off with a negative role model, and that shaped the way you saw yourself, and you saw the men around you. Is that is that right?
It's, yeah, that's pretty safe. I mean, growing up as a man, we're looking for, anybody's looking for role models, how to act, how to behave. And and I think because obviously I'm in my home and I'm seeing how my father treated my mother, I'm going to have an extra, there's going to be an obvious bias when I see that. And he did not treat her well at all. So in my early years, I can associate being a man with the man treating my mother a specific way. So I know pretty soon that's not what it is. That's not who I'm going to be. It did, like I mentioned, just kind of sour me on the idea of marriage at all, because it didn't seem like it would work out. But again, that was eventually I saw the woman I wanted to marry, and I had no choice, and I had to marry her, and that's what happened. But him, that one guy, soured me, and it's not just one guy. He's my father, so he's obviously going to be an important part. But once I got past that and realized that he doesn't represent all men, he represented himself. And the key is that I can't be that guy. I have to be different and I have to be my version of a man. And through getting past him and others, and then just being around men, just handling business, being respectful, going through this world without causing problems or being disrespectful to anyone, like that's a good human being. And that's who I wanted to be. So that's definitely true. You're right.
Thank you for sharing. So, I wanted to get to a few things that you said in your preliminary interview with me that stuck out to me. Um, when I asked you on your podcast what was the most common issue that came up as you were talking to your guests, you said that the man became the thing that he needed. Can you can you delve into that?
Of course, no problem. So one of the things I wanted to do with the podcast that I kind of came up with was a place for men to just talk about being a man. And since it's not one definitive thing, every man is different in some way. But I wanted to have men come in and be able to talk about what it's like for them to be a man. And inevitably, with a conversation like that, we talk about how you grew up and what stuff you've gone through. And for me, obviously, it's like who I was, surrounded by. But a lot of the men, excuse me, a lot of the men, like all of us, grew up and then some kind of trauma they had to deal with growing up. So with talking to men, I always, the feeling that I got and the impression I got, the more I talked to these guests, is that when they got old enough to maybe get out on their own, they would end up in a job, in a position, in some form or fashion, doing something that would have helped them had they met that person when they were a child. So, for example, if I've spoken to somebody who grew up in an abusive household, when that man grew up and got out of that house, he's the person that would set up a shelter for battered women. He would be the one that be helping women find a place to stay to get away from the bad guy. He would be the one helping her get a home, get a job, get training so she can take care of herself and the child. If somebody grew up and they just had no one to talk to, even simple things like maybe it was an okay household, but they had so many issues and dad was cold and they didn't feel comfortable talking to that person. When that man grew up, he's a psychiatrist or psychologist or he works in social work. He's there to talk, to be the person that he needed when he was growing up. A lot of times our childhoods, how we are raised, frames the kind of life that we're going to have once we get past it. So a lot of the times we become what we needed. I needed somebody to talk to and I didn't get it. I become that when I'm older. I had no confidence. I couldn't talk to girls. I was bad at sports. I had nobody to talk to about that because I felt embarrassed about talking about it. That man grows up and he's a psychiatrist and he's there to help that man dealing with confidence issues and any kind of struggles. Whatever we go through, whatever shenanigans we have gone through, at least the men that I spoke to, a lot of them, without really knowing it, became the thing that they needed growing up. So they're kind of filling a need that they had. And obviously, they can't take care of themselves as a child, but they can help the next boy growing up. They can be that solace, that place, that safe space, that person that this boy can talk to and just let it all out because he knows how it feels, because he remembers not having that person. So it's his job to be that guy, to be that supportive person for a man, to be that safe space for a man, to just be there. So that's what it is. And the more I talk to people, it's so interesting. You tell me, I hear about their childhood, and I'm like, I can get a pretty good idea of what you do now or why you do what you do now is because of how you were brought up.
So, being aware of that, I'm wondering, do you look back at your own life? Because you said you have a son. So, thinking about your upbringing, thinking about what do I want, think if you're thinking about what you want your son to be when he's an adult, do you, I mean, do you think about all these things as you talk to your son, as you think about your son's future?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's different for me. There's just different levels about this manhood thing because I'm a man. I was a man before I had children, so I understand for me what it means to be a man. But then I have a son, and now I need to be able to express that to him about how to be a man. So one of the things, like I mentioned, is I really had a checklist of the stuff that I'm not going to be as a man. Growing up, I'm not abusive. I'm not disrespectful. I'm going to love my wife. I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to do any, I'm going to be around. I'm not just going to be in the house. I'm going to be present. Because there's a difference between just living in the house and being present in somebody's life. And a lot of times growing up, I just had a dad who was in the house, but not present. So those are the things that I made a point to be. So when I have a son, I'm chivalrous by nature, and a lot of things that have come about, I don't know how. My dad wasn't chivalrous at all, but I am. So by nature, I pass that on to my son. I have 4 kids, one son, 3 daughters. So he knows to open the door and let the girls in. He knows to be respectful. He knows we don't even, and this, he's a boy and we're energetic, but he knows there's no violence towards women. These are things that I've taught him and he's learned by watching. Me and mom argue. We're adults, we're married. It happens, but it's an argument with a line. We're not violent, we're not disrespectful. It's possible to have conflict and for it to be safe, to not lead to something bad. So that's things that I always thought is important for our kids to see. All of them, especially my son. You can argue with your partner, and it's just an argument, and it's nothing more. No hands, no violence, nothing like that. So in a lot of cases, I wanted to teach my son with actions what I do and what I don't do, and that's how we learn. So when he goes on his first date, you listen to this girl, you respect her. You're not forcing anything on her. You follow her lead. You are a man of respect. And if you respect the woman or respect anybody, you're not going to have real problems. At the very least, whoever you deal with will know that you're respectful. So I made a point to not be those things. And I pass that on to my son and by extension, my daughters too, because they know how to be respectful. But in this case, we're talking about my son and he knows. And at times when he's been upset and whatever stuff, and I got to remind him, because listen, I'm not mad at you. You're a boy. You're growing up. He's 17 now. He's still got a lot of growing up left. He still have emotions. He gets annoyed about things. But I have to remind him how to control ourselves. We don't want to be perceived as that angry or scary black man. There's things that I have to teach him, that we have to talk about, that I have to remind him about. Conversations that I never had growing up. So that's what I mean by being present. I can have somebody there. I could just be around him, but I am present in his life. I'm an active participant in his life, showing him the right ways to be a man. He eventually is going to be his own man, but I can give him the right characteristics to be a good man. We're respectful. We love our family. We take care of our girls. We back them up. Nobody disrespects, and he knows that. And I've always used that line, like, you may be unhappy with your sisters and whatever, but we don't touch them. You know that. You understand that if somebody stepped up to your mom, my wife, it'd be a problem, right? And he understands that, and you know why, right? Because that's us. That's family, but that's our family. That's my wife, your mom. We don't disrespect women at all. We don't accept it from ourselves, and we don't accept it from anybody else. So being a man takes a lot, but when you have somebody who's been one and can teach you how to do it, it makes it easier to learn and give him most of the lessons. There's going to be some lessons that he's just going to have to learn going out to the world. But I do use my childhood and past childhood as barometers in how I would raise my son and teach him to be a man. Definitely true.
So now on that note, you when you say you teach your son to respect women, don't hit, you can argue, but don't use hands.
Mhm.
So I guess my challenge is that, um, you know, what do you do when your son comes across a woman who's disrespectful to him and maybe gets violent with him? Because I think men are expected to just take that,
Right.
and that's my personal challenge. So yeah, we're teaching men to be respectful to women, but what about what to expect from women, or what to look for in a woman, or in a partner, I should say. Like,
Right.
where's the line? That's my challenge.
Right. So I understand, and it's important to know. I mean, there shouldn't be violence between anyone. And since we are in our age now, where we're all equal, and nobody should be hitting anyone. And one thing I know is that no woman should be hitting me. No man should be hitting anyone. But in reality, I would say, son, if a woman is hitting you, you have every right. If that person initiated contact with you, I don't care, man or woman. You don't get to just hit me, and then because you're a woman, you get to get away with it. You're allowed to defend yourself. But in reality, that's not going to work. We know that, especially when you're a black man in this world. So a woman can hit you, and you can be defending yourself, but you're immediately the aggressor just because you're a man. So for me, it's it's temper. It's temper control. You have to be able to control yourself in situations. And he's had issues at times with his temper because he has three sisters whose sole job in life is to bug him. Like, that's all they do. And he's built up patience through that, being able to deal with these little girls who just come and bug him in his room while he's trying to play or do whatever. And when he had issues, when he would respond, I'm like, don't do it. And when he's gotten better, I'm like, good job. This is what you do. Recognize that you should be able to, but that doesn't mean you should. Unfortunately, we're not in such an enlightened world where you could just say, she came and she punched me or she pushed me, and I'm just defending myself. That there's no guarantee that's going to be taken seriously. Same thing, men get abused too. And that's why men don't even go and say that they're abused, because nobody's going to believe them. Like 40% of abuse happens to men, and they don't talk about it because it'll be laughed at, ridiculed, because you're not being a man. You let some woman beat you. It's There's so much to it, but what's imperative is if you control yourself and you do your absolute best to get out of situations. And that's what I tell them. Get away from it. Somebody's hitting you, put their hands on you. It would be easy to throw a punch, but it would be harder to walk away from the fight. And that's what I try to teach him. And it's still a process. He's 17, he's young. But that's my eventual goal, for him to understand that nobody wins in a fight. Nobody. And especially when you're a black male in a fight, you just need to get away. And we don't want to hit our women, of course. Even when they agitate, even if they initiate it, you want to do your best to step out of the situation. Now, if it keeps going and it's on, and you have to deal with it, then you do. And sadly, you just have to take the consequences. But given the opportunity, if you can just go, that's it. Just pull yourself out of the situation and go. You don't want to hit anybody, honestly.
So now, going back to your point about showing men showing emotions, and showing their feelings, I also think that it might be a challenge for men to do that. I mean, one, because they're expected not to, but also there's the fear of homosexuality, being perceived as gay, being perceived as fruity, um, as a pansy, a pussy.
Right.
What what do you what do you say to that? Because I also think it's of that fear of homosexuality that also contributes to men not being open with their emotions, especially to their children.
Right. And that's sad that that's an important part. We, as black people, there's for some reason in some Caribbean, I guess, kind of societies and such, there's this real aversion to homosexuality. And I never really understood it. And we really associate a lot of negative attributes to it when it comes to men. And there's nothing you can really do about that. For the people who are going to associate negative characteristics with being gay, that's what they're going to think no matter what you do. So when I would talk to men or talk to my son or other teens or nephews and cousins, it's imperative that you are confident enough in yourself that you can express your emotions. And you can't please everybody and you can't make everybody happy, but you can make yourself happy by releasing and by talking about your emotions. And if some people are going to take that as gay, because it's even like your feminine side, that's not entirely true either. We're emotional people. So it's not my feminine side, it's me. It's just my emotional side. The key to it is to be confident enough to release that, knowing it has nothing to do with my sexuality. It has to do with my humanity. It's a person that I am. It has nothing to do with who I sleep with. It's how do I live with myself? I need to be able to talk about my issues, and my sexuality is irrelevant. And if anybody else thinks that, that's really their problem. So that comes with raising a confident, loved child who knows who they are and is comfortable enough to talk about themselves without fear of reprisal. So to those kids, my son, whomever, some people are going to think that way, but you don't have to think that way. You don't have to act that way. You just be yourself. And it's better to get emotions and feelings out instead of letting them fester, because when you let them fester and you let them sit and it eventually comes out in a really negative way, that's much worse than a few idiots thinking, oh, he's homo or whatever because he cried about something that happened, or he was depressed because he didn't make the basketball team, or he was really upset because he didn't get that promotion, or he's just distraught because that girl broke up with him. We can't let the feelings of other people determine how we deal with ourselves. We have to be comfortable with ourselves, and then everybody else will just have to fall to the side.
Hmm. So I want to make sure I get this in. You have an acronym here,
Mm-hmm.
P-R-I-Z-E. Can
Mm-hmm.
you can you uh can you get into that?
Sure. So there was for years. There's always been this statement, that women are the prize, and I would hear that over and over and over again. After a while, I'm like, I'm not entirely sure that's the case. It's not to say that women aren't prizes, because women are special, but so are men. And it was very much the whole courting thing, in my opinion, is really just tailored for women. All of it is built up for women. From a man, I gotta have game to walk up to you and hope that you're gonna say yes if I buy you a drink and maybe go out. Then we go out, then I gotta buy you dinner, then I gotta, buy you another dinner, and then we gotta go on a trip, and I gotta spend all my money basically in the hopes that you're gonna like me. And it seemed like this whole pattern for women. But there's a man in there too. And I never heard stuff about what women are doing to for the man. But I know what I'm doing as a man for that woman. I'm spending my money, spending my time doing all of this to attract this or hope that she'll want to be with me. And it occurred to me after a while that there's so many these, I guess, celebrities out there giving advice to women about how to get a man. You got Steve Harvey with his just foolishness. You had like what's his name, Derek Jackson, Kevin Samuels, all these people, and then Samuels doesn't really fit in this, but just telling women what to do to get a man. And it occurred to me that if women are such the prize, why are there so many people telling women what to do to get men? To me, we're the actual prize. And that's what stuck with me for a long time. Men are the prize is always something that's been in my head. And then I kind of went away from it in terms of the courting, more into the mental state, into the mental health of men. So I took the word prize, which I like, and I try to find words that match the letters that can kind of encompass what a good man is. So the podcast that I have, Men Are the Prize, I have men come on and I ask them questions based on the letters in the word prize. So for me, P is purpose, R is resilience, I is separate. I save that. That's the encompassing of a man. Z, excuse me, zeal. E is expectation. So each of these letters represent a part of a man. And by asking questions about each of these words, we kind of get into how they grew up, what kind of man they want to be, what's stopping them from being that man, how did they reach where they wanted to be. So that acronym is just kind of the way that I can start a conversation. So what's your purpose? That's what the P is. And then we can talk about what you want to be. And in a lot of cases, it's like, oh, I'm a teacher, blah, blah, blah. Because when I was growing up, I had this teacher who I really liked, who would listen to me talk, who really inspired me to do things. Resilience, what did I go through? How did I get through this and then come out better? Zeal, what do I love? What am I excited about? What's the thing that makes me happy the most? And then ease, expectation, what do I expect of myself? Separate from relationships, from everything else. What do I expect myself to be? Am I going to be a good person? Am I going to be a CEO? Am I going to be a teacher? Am I going to be a janitor? I'm going to be whatever. What do I expect from myself? And what steps am I taking to do it, to be that person? So putting that together and then creating the acronyms is what led to me eventually just doing the podcast and asking men to open up and answer some real questions about themselves. So I like the word, and I was able to find some words within the word that I feel can kind of lead to a good conversation about being a man in today's world.
Awesome, awesome. And I just wanted to ask you this, get this in there, just bringing it back to you being a stay-at-home dad.
Mhm.
Um, was that something you chose to do, or was that something that, due to certain life circumstances, you fell into it, or how did that come about?
So, um, originally, anybody who knew me in my 20s and early 30s, after a relationship or two, I'd always said, I'm never, ever getting married. Not only were my parents just a bad match, other couples in my family, they didn't work out, they didn't look happy. So I'm like, I'm never getting married. It's never happening. And then I had his job, and one day I walked in and I saw this girl sitting at a desk, and I'm like, oh wow, that's I'm gonna marry that girl. And literally, me walked in that day like I'm never marrying somebody, and found my wife that day, and I had no choice. I had to find her, and then eventually got together and got married. So the location, the job that we worked at, we used to sell cable, and I worked there for 11 years. And one day they were like, yeah, we're gonna need you to never come back again. So I got fired that day. So I was distraught. I went home. I just did not know what to do. I didn't love the job, but it supplied the things that we needed. Good benefits. It was a check. We could take care of, childcare and all these things. But all of a sudden, I don't have this job. Now we were both working at the time, so my wife was like, "It's okay. We're good. I'm working. You can look and see if you can find something else." And I was looking for a little while, but all the while we have kids. At that time, three. And then I was home and I didn't find a job, but I'm home and I'm picking them up from the bus. I'm taking them to school. I'm taking them to events. I'm helping them when somebody's upset, somebody's had a tough day. And I really like the idea of taking care of the kids because I don't like childcare. I don't like the idea of somebody else watching my kids. So I got more and more comfortable with being the parent at home. And eventually I'm like, you know what? I think if we can handle it, this is what I want to do. So it wasn't a great situation that thrust me into the position, but it worked out because now I'm here with our kids and I don't have to depend on somebody else to watch my kids, to help them with their homework, to talk to my son about a bad day or somebody's talking bad about him, to talk to my daughters when some boy hits them for no reason or how they're struggling with homework. I can be there, the person they know. And it's just, it happened, wasn't planned, but probably the best thing that's happened for my children and their welfare because they've got a parent there to make sure that they're fed, they're taken care of, they're picked up after, they're loved. And that's what happened with me.
Did you become the thing that you needed?
To a degree, to a degree, because I would come home from school and there was nobody really there. But at the same time, there's just a lot of factors because by then I wasn't the biggest fan of my dad anyway. So it's like I needed him to be home. And even when he was, he wasn't like really in there. So I became a good father. I became the father that I needed. I definitely agree with you with that. I am, and it fits because to a degree, when I came up with this podcast, I was the first case study. So I feel like I started it inadvertently, and everybody's kind of followed the lead. That's what I needed, and that's what I became.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so we're starting to wind down. So, do you have any words of wisdom that you'd like to share, or any advice you'd like to share with our viewers?
Sure. Since the podcast, and I make a point to speak to men and boys, whatever, and the advice that I give is that it is important, it is imperative that you understand that you are allowed to feel however you want. It's okay to be sad, to be happy, to be depressed, to lack in confidence, to feel bad about something happening, to be jealous, to feel less than. It's okay to feel that way, but it's also more important. It's okay to talk to somebody about it. It's good to find somebody who you trust, who you can tell that I'm not okay. I don't feel good. I don't think I'm good enough. Nobody likes me. I'm terrible at these sports. I'm not smart. I don't know what's going on with me. I don't know how I fit in this world. It's okay because we all go through this growing up. The difference is not all of us had an opportunity to say it to somebody and to release it and get advice or just to get it off of your chest. It is important and it's okay to sometimes not be okay and talk about it. Being a man now means that it's okay to talk about it. And you can either be the person that finds somebody to talk to, or maybe when you get older, you can be the person, that somebody else talks to. Be your own man and be the man that is comfortable with showing the world what kind of man he is, no matter how emotional or not emotional you are. But don't let the world determine what kind of man you should be. You determine that. The kind of man you want to be is the kind of man you're going to be. And that'll be reflected in your actions, in your words, to everybody around you. So, what it means to be a man is to be yourself, no matter what the world thinks. Be respectful, be joyful, love yourself, no matter what state you're in.
Amazing advice. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Harvey. All right, let me get your banner up there. All right, so you guys, Harvey is all over social media. He is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So definitely give him a follow if you want to reach out to him. Definitely hit him up on social media. All that information is there. So definitely give him a follow, support, um, like, follow. I think that's it. Yeah, like, follow, whatever the button is, press that button. Definitely support him and pass by his social media and give him a follow. And as we've alluded to a few times, he does have a podcast for men. So the link is scrolling below. So if you want to listen to his episodes, you want to hear all the other case studies, there's the link there. I definitely encourage you to listen to his podcast and feel free to reach out to him if you're a man listening and you want to be a case study and you want to you have something to unburden or you want to be a guest on his podcast. Definitely reach out to Harvey and I'm sure he can work it out. But yes, so the link scrolling below is the link to his podcast and I encourage you to listen and subscribe to this podcast and tell all your friends. All right, Harvey, I don't know if there's anything else you want to promote.
No, that's it. Just thank you so much for, giving me your time and allowing me to speak. And any man who wants to talk, I'm there. But I also encourage women to listen too. Feel free to, this is a good thing to hear men talk about their issues and their struggles. It may not be something that you're privy to, it may not be something that you get to hear, but it's got to be really interesting to hear a man talk. And some of these men, when they kind of open up about things, it's probably the side of a man that you don't hear much. And I think it'll give you a lot of insight into what we're going through. So everybody listen, of course, I would certainly want you to. But yeah, women, give it a chance also. You might be surprised at what you hear.
All right. So the podcast is for men, the podcast is for women, but whoever you are, definitely listen to the podcast and subscribe. Don't just listen, but
Exactly. Thank
subscribe
you.
as well.
Definitely. Click that button. Every
Yes,
Saturday an
subscribe.
episode drops. So yes, you cleaning the house, you want to listen to something deep in between Anita Baker and Luther, throw the podcast in, we get deep and then you play some music afterwards. So yes, I think you'll enjoy it.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Harvey, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, I'm going to place you backstage. And you guys, it is just you and me. So let me get up my little banner here. All right. And we have reached the conclusion of our episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, wherever you are watching this episode right now, whether that's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you are watching this episode, and don't forget to follow us. Follow, like, subscribe, whatever the button is, press that button, press it now. So definitely, stay in touch with us wherever you are watching this episode. And while you're at it, let us know what you thought about this episode by leaving a comment in the comment section below or in the comment thread. We would love to hear your feedback, and I'm sure our guest does as well. And as a reminder, we are a Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So if you would like to learn more about our services, our workshops, if you want to learn more about the company, if you're interested in getting tutoring services for yourself or for your children, please reach out to us. Our information is scrolling below, but I will say our website. Our website is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. And we have an email list and a texting list. And I encourage you to sign up for those things to learn about our events, our discounts, and any special promotions. So sign up for our email list and our texting list as well. The information is scrolling below on the screen. And for those of you particularly looking at this video on Facebook, it will be in our description as well. All right, and I have one last message before we officially close.
Hey there, have you heard of us? We're a small team of tutors here at A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. We believe that education and information should be accessible to everyone, regardless of income, race, or creed. We're dedicated to making this happen, but we need your help. Please consider making a donation to our company. No amount is too small. Your donation will allow us tutors to remain employed, offer free and low-cost services, put on productions like this web series, and reach out to families nationwide. With your help, we can tackle the academic challenges of our students and the emotional, mental, and behavioral changes that result from these challenges. As a bonus, we can improve our communities in the process. Support us today. Note: we're a for-profit company. We're not a charity. Your donation may not be tax deductible. Please consult a tax professional.
Yes. Oh, and I actually have another message that I'm going to share right now. Just came in, so I'm just going to play that right now. Scratch that. Never mind. All right. So, with that said, thank you so much for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing you at the next episode. So, thank you again. And now I am signing off.